everyone, and welcome to the Nonfiction Kidlit Craft Conversations podcast, where we dive into the craft and business of writing children's nonfiction. I'm your host, Kirsten Larson. Today's episode is about something that every writer needs, but often doesn't know how to find, and that is community and accountability. I'm joined by my dear friend and fellow author, Marcie Colleen, whose next book is Happy Friendsgiving, illustrated by Laura Sandoval Herrera, and it releases September 23rd, just 1 week after my next book, which is This Is How You Know, illustrated by Cornelia Lee. So, welcome to the show, Marcie. Please introduce yourself and your books.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. My name is Marcie Colleen. I am a children's author living in San Diego. I have been published in picture books, prose chapter books, and children's comics slash early graphic novels, whatever term they're calling them this week. My next book, as Kirsten already said, is Happy Friendsgiving, which is subtitled A Thanksgiving Celebration of Found Families, and it's illustrated by Laura Sandoval Herrera. This book is about community. Isn't that cool?
I know, I know. Well, and interestingly, I mean, this is how you know an aspect of that talks about how scientists are not solitary, but work in community with other scientists to expand our scientific knowledge. So we're all about community, accountability, and getting the work done here today. So I'm excited you're here because we've tried to figure out the origin of our accountability partnership. I think, did we decide it was 2016 or 2017 that we started being accountability partners?
I think we started in 2016. It was when your kids were going to be going back to school, and you said, I'm going to have to start getting up earlier. So it must have been like the fall.
Yes.
And you said, so I don't think I can meet at the time that we used to. I don't even remember what time that was. It might have been like 8 a.m. or something. And you said, I'm going to have to meet earlier. And I said, well, what time? And you said, like 5:30. And I said, okay. I was thinking I'll try anything once, right? And so I was like, okay, I mean, what am I gonna do? I'm sleeping at that hour. I'll just get up and I'll work with Kirsten. And we've been doing that every single Monday through Friday since.
There you go. All right. So before we get too far into it, for those who don't know, like, how would you define what an accountability partner is for a writer? Like, what is an accountability partner?
I was thinking about this and I was like, are you like my kidlit therapist? It's like, only I don't pay you hourly. I'm not quite sure. I think to me, what you represent to me in my life, Kirsten, and if we're going to call you the accountability partner, then I would say that an accountability partner is someone who is your cheerleader, someone who shares in the ups and downs of publishing with you, who is somebody that you share your goals and your projects with, who, truthfully, when I do something, it kind of doesn't feel real unless I'm telling you about it. Like it's just it's kind of like you keep me on track. You empathize with me when things are rough. You also push me when I feel like things are rough and I don't want to move on. And yeah, you're just a craft partner. You are a beta reader sometimes, a brainstormer. You're really like just a best friend in the kidlit world, is what it really comes down to.
Well, amen to all that. And I really was not fishing for compliments, but wow. Um, no, ditto to all that. But I mean, I think I tell people too, because writing can be such a, well, I should say, you and I both work full time for ourselves. So part of it is our creative work. And then we have client work that we do. And we both work out of our homes. And that can be a really solitary existence. So I often tell people that you're also my water cooler, I mean, because when you're in an office, you have interaction all day long and you're checking in with people. And so not only do you and I check in the morning and we talk about, what is your project? What's your creative project for this morning that you're working on? And we say, okay, here's what I'm working on this morning. Here's my goal. Here's what I'm going to try to accomplish. Then we work at it for a couple of hours and then we check in. But then we also end up like texting each other pretty much all day long with what's going on? How's this going? How was your meeting? Right. So, like you said, it has expanded beyond just I'm trying to get a chapter down or I'm trying to get a spread finished. It's kind of expanded into this all day long check in.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that developed over time, like, because when we started this, like, we knew each other, but I don't we certainly didn't know each other as well as we know each other now. Now we're all up in both of our business, all day. But it's like it's funny because I have caught myself telling people like, "Oh, Kirsten's the person that I check in with at 5:25 and we figure out what we're going to work on for the day and then we check in around 7 something and how did it go?" But I'm like, that's only part of it. We are constantly texting each other this new development, that new development, this is going on. Okay, I'm done with that. Now I'm going to move on to this. So really, it's not just the morning anymore. It's a full day thing. And you're like my coworker. You're like the cubicle next to mine,
Exactly.
where every so often I just kind of say, "What are you working on right now? This is what I'm doing."
Peek your head over the wall. What's going on over
Totally.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, so, the way that we became accountability partners is we were critique partners to start with. I think what I was struggling with at that time is, especially when it comes to your own creative work, sometimes it can be hard to be self motivated, especially if you have other work that you have to do for clients or for whatever. And so sometimes finding that motivation to spend the time to do your creative work, it can be tough, especially once you get going with all those distractions of email and texts and phone calls and families and etc. So I think when we started this, I know at least I was feeling that I was having a hard time carving out time for my creative work. I was good with all the writing adjacent things like listening to webinars and getting my critiques done on time, writing a blog post, right? But when it came to actually getting the words on the page, I needed to tell somebody else I was going to do it so they could ask me, "Did you get it done?"
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And, you know, I think a lot of writers struggle with that. It's easier to do the things that people are waiting on or the things that bring in money. I know Julie Hedlund talks about this a lot when she does the 12 days of Christmas for writers every year. She talks about how she would just always subjugate all of her, writing time to building her business. And, that's just what happens sometimes. Choosing to get together every single morning, and I say get together, I mean, we're obviously just texting each other. We're not at each other's houses at 5:30 in the morning, but to get in touch with each other, I always feel like no matter how busy my work week is going to be, I know that nobody else can touch that 5:30 to 7 o'clock time. Like, I don't have any meetings at that time. I'm not scheduling client critiques at that time. I'm not teaching at that time. And so I know that that time is kind of sacred in the fact that I work on my creative projects, whatever that is, whatever manuscript, whether it's a revision, whether it's research, whether it's drafting, whatever it is, I am working on that at that time so that every single day I am moving the needle on my creative projects. And, then I can get on with my day after 7 and feel all right, I did that. And then there's tomorrow, and I can continue to work on it tomorrow. And that has been instrumental in all of the writing that I have done to be able to get the projects done that I have done. I'm thinking now that you and I probably did start meeting in about 2019, 17 maybe, because I don't think you were a part of my life in that way when I was writing the Super Happy Party Bears, and I could have used you in hindsight. Because I mean, I would have like a whole day where I was like, just want to write this one chapter, and it wouldn't get done. And so, it took a while to develop those skills to be able to be disciplined, and having a partner who who's helping me stay disciplined, was just a game changer.
Well, and I'm thinking about the idea. One of my all-time favorites quotes when it comes to marketing, and I don't know who said this originally, was front list sells back list. So literally the best use of our time is to write the next thing, right? And it is as you reminded me recently, because I forgot that I say this, all we can control is the work itself, right?
Mhm.
And so this relationship helps us create new frontless material by getting up and doing the work every day. Um, so I think, one thing I do want to say is we check in real time. We are both early birds. We don't mind getting up early, but this is not the only way that such a partnership could work. So what are some other ways that you've heard of these types of relationships working?
Well, I know that there are people who do get together in person and co-work, sitting. I used to do that in the before time, before the pandemic. I used to get together with a friend every Wednesday all day at the library, and we would just write. We would usually share over lunch, and then when we were saying goodbye, like what we worked on or what, how it was going. He was not writing Kidlit, so it was a little different. Like, I feel like with you, I can bring a problem to you, or something that I'm having a sticky issue with in a manuscript, and you can help in a different way. I know some people, it might work to have more than one person as their accountability partner. Maybe I got my claws in you, and I'm not like letting I'm like, there's no way. I want one person at 5:25. I should not be texting the world. Like, the autocorrect that brings joy to our mornings, because we're both not awake. We haven't had our first cup of coffee yet. I only want to be in touch with one person, but depends on the time of day that you get together. And if you're getting together in the same location, maybe more than one person. I would say just don't let it turn into a critique partner, like a critique group, because we get the work done so that we have something to take to our critique groups. You need that time to write, not just talk about writing.
Well, I was going to say I've heard of people who they do have a group, and it's sort of more of an asynchronous check-in. So
Oh,
they email, like it's a group email, I believe, and so
oh,
they'll at the beginning of the week, for example, maybe they'll set a goal. I'm going to do 500 words a day or whatever, and then they sort of email the group when they're finished.
mhm.
So, I mean, I've heard of more kind of asynchronous where everybody has their own block of time that they're working, and then they kind of just check in and track progress against a specific goal.
I can see that. I think you would probably agree with me that I get too much email as it is, so please don't give me another email that I have to keep in my inbox and answer by the end of the week or the end of the month or whatever. I have also known people who have worked on Zoom where they
Mm.
both are there on camera, so you can see that the person's actually working. They're muted and they do their work, and a friend of mine used to do this, 2 friends of mine used to do this all the time, and one of them used to go to, like, a coffee shop, and she said that she didn't feel bad leaving the table to go to the bathroom because her friend was live right on Zoom and could see if, like, someone tried to, like, steal her stuff. She could be like, "Hey, you," she's like, "Ring," she's like the ring on the doorbell. But, yeah, I suppose that could work too. I mean, some people, it's all about just how do you get your butt in the chair, and how do you make it stay there so that you can get some work done? So, I suppose that would work too.
One of the reasons I like doing it first thing is I often will not open my email until after we've done our thing, right? So it's much easier. I will not go on Facebook or Instagram.
Oh,
It's
you're
much
so good.
easier to block out those I mean, most of the time, right? But I mean, it's much easier for me to block out those distractions first thing in the morning, but I think that's what's helpful about an accountability relationship too is it kind of empowers you to shut down as much of the outside world as you can and just get it done.
And I think that when you just said that, I'm
Mm.
thinking, "Oh, you're so much better than me." That might not be fully true all the time, but I think believing that your accountability partner is like being super productive and getting all this stuff done is very motivating also. It's like, Kirsten's not checking her email, so I shouldn't check my email either. Kirsten didn't open up the news, so like, there's that part of it too, where I'm just kind of like, I want to be good like Kirsten and not check my email and my social media before I start working.
Well, and we also give each other a lot of grace. Side note, Marcie is a rock star who plays in a real rock band. So if Marcie has been out rocking late the night before and she needs a pass, or one of us has had a rough night and needs to sleep in, we give each other grace. And
Yeah.
it's not, foot to the fire, but we're just trying to encourage each other the best we can. There's no penalties.
No, there's no penalties at all. And I mean, obviously, we miss each other if the other one doesn't get up. And it feels weird because, like, oh, I'm still in my living room alone in the dark writing, but like it feels empty because Kirsten's not on the other end there. Sometimes I wake up to a text message from Kirsten that says, I've had a rough night. I'm turning off the alarm. There are times that I've gotten up and have a migraine or something, and I'm like, I'm going back to bed. You have to give each other grace. You have to give yourself grace in this business. And that's something that I've had to learn because I'm not very good about giving myself grace. So,
Well, and also because it's really hard to be productive if you're exhausted or you are stressed, you're in a really stressful season. I mean, there have been times where, maybe the creative part of my day is reading a craft book or recentering myself before I dive into the next creative project, because that's part of nurturing our creativity too, which we may not have time for during the rest of the day.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. To still have that time set aside to say, I'm going to watch this webinar, or I'm going to, read this craft book, or I'm going to, read through these critiques that somebody gave me. Like it's all as long it I feel like as long as somehow it is going to lead me to being able to write more, then sometimes you have to take that morning to do that hour and a
right. Sometimes accountability partners may work on goal setting together. We are pretty good about setting monthly goals independently. We don't normally share our monthly goals. I mean, maybe they come up, but we don't really have like a regular practice of sharing our monthly goals. But we kind of tell each other, this is my front burner project that I'm going to be working on. And then when it shifts, and we celebrate the accomplishments when a
Heck yeah.
draft is turned in.
Heck yeah, we have to. You have to. Yeah, I mean, talking about like what's on the front burner, I feel like lately I've just been a short order cook and I've had so many different dishes going all at once. Um, but usually I work on a daily goal that leads to a weekly goal, which, overarching monthly goals of what I would like to do with each project, getting projects done. Yeah, I share them all with you when it comes up.
I normally have at least, it depends. I just finished an adult novel. That was my creative goal for
Yay!
months. I mean, that was like months and months and months of trying to get that to a point where I felt I could send it out to beta readers, right? But like right now, I'm kind of juggling a picture book idea and writing a craft book. And when it really just got to the point where I was getting so frustrated on this picture book that it was not fun anymore or filling my creative well, right? I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to pivot to the craft book, because when the writing's a little more fun, I feel like the writing is better, and when you're really forcing it, sometimes the best thing we can do is to let it go. But I did let you know. Like, I mean, I tried for several days to stick with it. And then I was like, this rhyme is killing me.
I think the one that killed me was when you were in just a few days ago, you were working on you said, "I'm gonna work on this picture book manuscript," and you're like, "Ugh, it's in rhyme." And then like an hour and a half later, you're like, "I'm still on the same stanza." And then like 4 hours after that, you're like, "I'm still on the same stanza." But I mean, that's working with rhyme. I mean, that's what that's what happens. But people often ask, like, do you have more than one project going on? And I do. It's not just because I also do freelance writing, but I think it's important to kind of be able to pivot onto another project if you're stuck on one, because if you're stuck on one and you have nothing to pivot to, then you're just not getting any work done. You're not getting any writing done. But if you're stuck on one and you're able to pivot like you did, then you just start working on another project and maybe that project can move forward quicker. So yeah, I always have more than one thing going on, but that wasn't always the case. I think a lot of my habits and skills and time management that I have now is stuff that I've developed through the years of being a writer and being a full-time writer, but also when I did have a job. And that just, I remember one time having the feeling that I wanted to be a full-time writer, but I was wondering, like, if I'm ever a full-time writer, like, what do I do all day? How would I have something to do all day? Now, I'm like, yeah, how many hours do I have today? How can I get this all done? But that all grew over time. If someone is a new writer and they're just trying to get their feet going as far as this career is concerned, we're speaking from wisdom of many years here.
Well, because there are always going to be other demands on your time, especially once you start publishing. Demands to, from your critique partners to give critique. There will be encouragement to do social media posts. There will be encouragement to engage in other marketing activities. And I mean, all these things that are part of writing, but don't have to do with creating the work. People are often surprised and I'm like, yeah, most full-time writers are not writing for 8 hours a day, except for like I think Stephen King maybe and Janet Ivanovich. But like the most people, it's like if you get a solid like 2, 3, maybe 4 hours, the rest of the day is writing adjacent. It's all related to the work, but it's not necessarily the work.
I mean, I very rarely get more than 2 hours of writing a day. And I think that people can look at all the work that I've put out there and realize that it's possible with just 2 hours a day to get work done and move it forward through the pipeline. Because once 7 o'clock hits and I start my day is filled with all different kinds of writing adjacent things, but very rarely is it going back to writing creatively. That is
Right.
very, very rare that I do that.
Yeah. No, I agree that I'm the same way. I mean, for me, if it doesn't, everybody has their best creative time. Mine has always been first thing in the morning. It is very difficult for me to come back to it later
Yeah.
in the day.
Oh, I know, and come 3 o'clock, I've got nothing in me. I've got absolutely nothing in me. I'm, like, ready to call it a day at 3 o'clock. Like, I can do some things that are, like, mindless, like, answer email or send out an invoice or something, but I just don't have any creativity in me. And so, I think sometimes it's easy to look at writers who are really prolific and putting out tons of books and being like, they must just sit at their desk all day, every day like Stephen King does, and that's how they get the work done, but it's not the case
Right.
in my experience.
So let's pivot a little bit. I mean, we are living in I think what is a difficult time for a lot of people to maintain their creativity. There is a lot of stuff going on in the world and we're humans in this world and so it is very easy to get distracted by all of these, and get focused on all of these big problems. So how does this relationship help you stay motivated during tough creative periods? Either with external stuff going on or internal stuff going on. I can share, I wrote This is how you know. I wrote this book during COVID.
Mm.
It was before the vaccines. We're both in California, so we were locked down for quite a long time. And the world felt like it was on fire. Stakes were very high, and I was really worried about my family. And so it was very hard to spend time on my creativity. And I know that for me, our relationship during that time period was really important because it was so easy to be distracted by the news. And so I knew at least if I could get up and do something, if I could get up and tackle one creative project, even if it was just one picture book spread that I was focused on, right? And so during that time period when I was writing, this is how you know, which went through many forms. Um, I know that you being there was really important for me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that when the world shut down and then stayed shut down, because of course at first we didn't know if we were going to be in lockdown for a week or a month or,
Mhm.
oh no, not until Easter. Little did they know it was like Easter several years later before we could emerge. Um, I think that at that time it would have been very easy to just be like everything shut down. There are like publishing is like slowed down to an even slower pace. um Let me just not do any work, let me just kind of not create anything new. I think it was during COVID that, I also learned how to write as an escape for myself,
Mhm.
because writing something that was humorous, I can't even really remember what exactly I was working on during COVID. I know I was doing a lot of freelance for Epic, so I was writing like Creepy Cafetorium and Cat Ninja, and I feel like during that time when I could make myself laugh between the hours of 5:30 and 7, it was, such a nice escape. And a lot of times, because there was not a lot else going on, I didn't have to go anywhere. I would just keep on writing. And to have, it was almost like showing up to a job, to know that Kirsten was going to be up to, write. So I'll do the same thing. And it was very, very helpful. And then there have been other times that, I've been, all writers, have those moments where they feel like, what if I never have another good idea in my life? And I remember I went through that a couple summers ago where I had written all the things. Like I was right, I had nothing new. I was like, I've written all the things. And, I was still continuing to get up every single morning because I felt like it's what Elizabeth Gilbert talks about in Big Magic, where she talks about like just showing up and like
Mhm.
the muse knows where you are and the muse can choose to show up if they want, but you are there and you are ready. And I kept on showing up, but I didn't really have much I was working on. And I remember talking to you about that. And that's when you mentioned that when you get into moments like that, that you read Big Magic. And you
Mhm.
told me the parts of Big Magic that help you. And I have little flags in my copy of the book on those sections that I have returned to several times. And I also would spend time listening to the Big Magic podcast called Magic Lessons. And I would listen to those and I would listen to them when I would go out for my run. And then before I knew it, I was able to continue to go. And I'm the type of person, many people know this about me, that I have had a run streak for over 7 years where I get up, I run every single day for at least a mile. And one of the reasons why I do that is because I know that the second I stop, it's going to be very hard to get back into it. So in continuing, when I'm not really writing, when I don't have a project going on, when, things are not going as smoothly as I want to still get up at 5:25 and text you, I don't get out of the habit of it. Like if I don't do that for a week because I'm like, I don't really have anything that I'm working on, I might not get back to it. So I just keep on doing it every single day, without fail. And hopefully at some point I'll get back into it if I use these tools to help me.
Well, and they talk a lot about like that's how you form a habit, right?
Yes.
Is through not just doing it, but then also tracking your progress, and for us, it's this, I don't know, 8 years of text messages going back and forth. For other people, I mean, I think it was, Jerry Seinfeld or somebody who wrote a joke a day and like marked it off on a
Yep.
calendar, right? So whatever you want to use to track your progress, but that is part of habit formation and, instilling this writer's habit
Yeah.
that has helped, I think, both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't get off. I heard somebody, I can't even remember who it was now. It might have been on a podcast or a webinar or something that was talking about, I'm going to totally botch this. It was some European country where they were on the bus and the bus went around in a loop, but it was a very big loop. And that if they missed their stop, they just had to stay on the bus and eventually they would get back to where they needed to be. And so the whole takeaway of this was don't get off the bus. And so, you just keep on showing up every single day. You stay on the bus and eventually you'll show up where you need to.
Well, and I should say, like, you teach a lot around the writer's way. So a lot of these ideas like filling your creative well and showing up to the page every day and like doing morning pages and things like that. A lot of that comes out of the artist way. Did I say the
Yeah.
writer's way? The
Yeah.
artist way, excuse me.
Yeah.
Um, which is another book that I would recommend when you're looking to sort of fill your creative well and just find a way back to the page. Julia Cameron talks about morning pages. It doesn't have to be good. Like you're just opening up the journal, you're just writing longhand, you're just kind of getting all the gook out. And if you write nothing else, you've written your morning pages, you've done something, and eventually something will come.
Yeah, I think at one point when I was running an Artist Way group and you were a part of it, on those days that I didn't know what to write, that I was stuck in some way, I would just write my morning pages. And I know that Julia Cameron she's very strict in her rules with herself, and she does morning pages every single day before she writes anything else. And I can't do that because I have a finite time period. I don't like to have the whole day to write creatively. So I was running out of time if I wrote my morning pages before getting to my manuscript. But, I do them intermittently. Like if I'm having trouble in my writing, maybe just opening up a notebook and just writing by hand, even if it's like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with this manuscript. I'm having so much trouble with this character. This character doesn't seem to be revealing itself to me, and just keep on writing. Like sometimes the answers might appear or you might get unstuck in some way.
Yeah, and it's always simmering in the background. Even if you've pivoted to something else, your subconscious is still working and still thinking. And you just never know when you're going to be surprised and delighted by the next idea. The problem will find a solution. If somebody is looking for an accountability partner, what are some places they might look? I mean, our relationship grew out of a critique partner relationship, but there are all kinds of writing communities.
And I think that our critique group, it's worth saying that our critique group was out of 12 by 12. Like we
Yes.
all met in 12 by 12 and started a critique group out of that. And so I remember early, early on when I first started writing, and a writing teacher said that the best critique partners you were going to find were people who were in class with you because they have a similar foundation. They have a similar drive usually because they've taken a class, they've like paid some money and they're like investing in their craft. So I would say that those classes are also a really great way to find somebody who could be a good accountability partner. One of the reasons why we work so well with each other, I think, is because we're both self-motivated anyway. I mean, if I just fell off the face of the earth and never got up at 5:30 again you would totally still be getting up at 5:30. I would hope, and I know I would.
I would, but it would not be nearly as entertaining.
No, especially with the autocorrects before the first cup of coffee. But yeah, I mean, it would be lacking in some way, but I would still continue to get up, and you and I would still continue to move our careers forward. But finding somebody who has a similar work ethic to you, somebody who has a similar drive to you, I think it's also really helpful, somebody who is in the same kind of writing that you do. I mean, obviously, you are more focused on nonfiction, and I'm mostly focused on fiction. But we both are part of the same world. And also, it's very helpful that we're both in California, that we're both in each other. I mean, I guess if I was a late riser, then if I lived in New York and you were texting me at 8:20 or 5:25 and it was 8:25 my time, that might work for me. So for some people that might actually work,
Right.
span the time zones, but you and I have a very similar way that we structure our day. But I think the drive, the desire, the passion is all really, really important. And you can find a lot of people like that through organizations and classes that you're taking together.
Yeah. So existing writers communities, you mentioned the 12 by 12 picture book writing group, classes, etc.
Yeah, Inked Voices. I would say find one person who's going to be your accountability partner. I personally don't want three other people texting me all day telling me that they're going to go eat lunch.
I'm off the
I li-
clock.
I mean, I like it when Kirsten texts me and tells me she's going to go eat lunch, and I tell her I'm going to go eat lunch, but I don't need other people filling me into their day to day.
Well, and talking about communities, you have started doing this thing the last couple of years called
Last year.
oh, is it just last
Last
year?
year was the
Okay.
first year, yeah.
All
So
right. So tell folks a little bit about 100 days because this is a form of accountability and maybe a place people can find accountability partners.
exactly. So years ago, I've been following this woman online. Her name is Jennifer Blanchard, and she does a lot of manifestation and belief work. And she is very much a person who's all about setting goals. And her birthday happens to be September 22nd, which she always points out is the day that marks 100 days left in the year. And so she always does something about 100 days left. And this really struck me because I have been guilty lately of being like, how is it this far into the year already? Like this year is flying by. And I think sometimes when we set goals for ourselves in December that we're going to start in January, and then we don't feel like we've made a lot of accomplishment on them, that, maybe we never even started it. We get to September and we think, well, the year is over with. I might as well just wait until next year to try this again. But when you think about having 100 days left from September 22nd to December 31st, 100 days is a big chunk of the year. I mean, 365 days, you still have 100 of them. So last year, I taught a workshop that was all about the last 100 days of the year and how you can build in a plan and goals for yourself to, even if it's not feasible to write the great American novel in that last 100 days, you can be a lot further along than waiting for January 1st next year to suddenly say, I'm going to try this again. So I found it very motivating that 100 days would be left in the year. And what can you do with that 100 days? And last year, when I taught it, I had lots of people. I checked in with everybody every month. I would do a email check-in, and I was amazed at the feedback that I was getting from people where they're like, I'm getting stuff done, or I already completed what I wanted to do for my 100 days left, so now I'm doing something else. And sure, there are holidays in there. There's the back to school craziness that people have to deal with. But I like to teach how to set goals in a realistic world. What can, looking at your calendar, we pull out our planners, we look at our planners, we plan out what can we do every single week to get some work done? Where do we need to take the week off and not do any work? So I'm going to be running that again. Like I said, September 22nd is the day that marks 100 days left, which this year happens to be a Monday. So how fortuitous is that?
Perfect.
I know, but I always run the workshop a little bit before the last 100 days so that you have plenty of planning time after taking the workshop so that that Monday you can hit the ground running with your last 100 days. So this year I'm going to be running it on September 9th, and it is from 4 to 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, so that's 7 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the workshop's 90 minutes, $35. Maybe you can meet some accountability partners. I will be your accountability partner, at least through email for the last 100 days. And you can end the year feeling, all right, it wasn't all a wash. Like I got this done. A lot of times I have people pull out their goals for the year and be like, what haven't you gotten to yet? And there's always something that falls through the cracks. There's always something that you were like, I don't really know if I want to do that. But hey, why don't you try for the last 100 days?
Yeah. And so I will put a link to sign up for this. You just have to email Marcie. I'm going to put the contact page for your website in the show notes. And so folks who are interested can reach out to you and learn about this opportunity to get some accountability and some community and get some work done the way we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So we're going to go lightning round. What is your favorite productivity tool or hack?
So I have a writing partner through Epic named Raina, and we always set for ourselves what she calls the ADP, which is the adequate daily progress. So I like to look at my schedule, and I this has taken years to develop, but I now know what is realistic that I can get done in one day because I used to feel very defeated about my goals because I would put them on the calendar and then I was constantly scratching and putting them on another day and scratching them and putting them on another week because I wasn't scheduling realistically. So the ADP and knowing what I can accomplish in one day and taking time to learn that about myself has been a huge hack for me. So highly track your time, find out how much can you do. Is one chapter all you can write in a book a day, then fine. Then don't put that you're going to write 3 chapters because then you're going to feel like a failure at the end of the day. Put one chapter and then cross it off your list and be like, all right, I did the ADP. If you still have it in you to go and do more, but you've already hit that ADP.
That's interesting that you say that. I've never put a word like a term to it, but I will say, if I'm doing a picture book, I a lot of times if I'm writing, if I'm drafting, I only try to do a spread a day
Yeah.
because I'm like, I'm going to try to get a draft done in a month. And I know if I do a spread a day, I will have a draft, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and if it's novels, I'm like 1,000 words a day. If I go longer, great. But I mean, you could do in 100 days, your 100 days, you could do 100,000 word novel with 1,000 words a day, right?
You totally could. You totally
Yeah.
could. So yeah, so Raina is always like the ADP, the adequate daily progress to move something forward. And then I don't feel when I look at my calendar and I have all these checks and I don't have all these erase marks and scribbles and stuff because I didn't get to that. It just makes me feel so much more accomplished each week and each day that I'm getting done something. So don't overschedule yourself. That is my biggest hack is learning what your ADP is.
All right. I'm going to piggyback off of that one more time. There was a book, I believe it was called Play, and it has a section about to do lists. She talks about having kind of like 3 work goals a day and also putting your personal goals on your to do list because we all have to do things like work out or make dinner or schedule that dentist appointment. And we have to make that invisible work visible so that we don't overschedule ourselves. So she talks about like three main work goals, 3 kind of personal goals. You can have maybe up to 3 more sort of floaters, but I know like once I start getting past 3 or 4 work goals and like 3 or 4 personal to-dos, I start to feel very stressed. So
Yeah. And what was that old like infomercial that thing set it and forget it that like
yes.
some sort of grill or something? I think that's one of the reasons why people are like always amazed by how many things I juggle and how many classes I teach and all this stuff. But basically what happens is I schedule something and then I put it on my calendar and then I back up like 2 weeks before that is when I start to think about it. I'm like, okay, now I need to start planning for that class. And so once that's in my calendar, I never think about it until it shows up on my calendar. So being able, knowing what you are capable of doing at any given time is probably the greatest knowledge that you can have of yourself. And that goes into personal goals and professional goals. Like if you can't find time to work out every single day, one of the women that I follow a lot about productivity and goal setting, her name is Laura Vanderkam, and she talks all the time about the fact that 3 days a week is a habit. That is a habit. So if you can't do five, if you can't do seven, don't worry, aim for three. And so I run every single day. I don't get to do yoga every single day because a lot of times I don't have time for it. So I do it 3 times a week, and that's still a habit. So just learning what you have the capacity for.
Yeah. And even if it's writing half an hour during your kids' nap time, and checking in with a partner. That's how it started for me. Every those little increments of working towards your goal count. You don't have to have all day. In fact, sometimes having boundaries and limited time forces you to be more productive and to really put your nose down when you're on the clock.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I can't believe that you started when your kids were napping because having just seen you last weekend and seeing your one child who towers over me while the other one was dropped off at college just like amazes me that that happened.
Oh yes, it all started during nap time. But little goals consistently applied lead
Yep.
up to big successes. I think that's the takeaway for both of us.
Absolutely. When I was training to run the marathon, they said every single person, whether you are a Kenyan who can actually win this thing, or you're going to be one of the last people over the finish line, everybody runs a marathon one step at a time. And that's exactly how it is. One step, one foot in front of the other, and eventually you'll get there.
Which reminds me of one of my favorite things we text each other back and forth, especially when we're both stressed, which is Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird, which is how we get the work done.
And now that we keep on going on, people realize why we text each other all day because we always have something else to say.
It's the never ending interview. What is a recent writing win?
A recent writing win. I sold an early or a chapter book graphic novel series that will be announced very, very soon, maybe by the time this podcast comes out. It's a 4 book deal, and I'm super excited about it. After working at Epic for the last 4 years and writing comics for their platform that have been turned into books, I finally have my own intellectual property that is going to be coming out. I'm super excited about that.
And I am dying to read it when it comes out. All right. Your next book. Show us again and tell us a little bit about it.
My next book is Happy Friendsgiving, a Thanksgiving celebration of found families. Having lived in New York City, it is not uncommon for people to have to work the day before Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving. And so I feel like it's a very New York City thing, but I know that it happens throughout the country that people can't travel home for the holiday. And so getting together with friends was the way that I celebrated Thanksgiving for years living in New York City. And I loved it because I would meet new people. It wasn't always people that I knew. I'd be invited to somebody's house and I'd meet a handful of other people. You get to try different foods that people bring that represent their culture or the way that they celebrate Thanksgiving. And I am a person who is all about community. I love meeting new people. I love being in communal places with people. And I love the fact that it's like a big old melting pot. And I just so Happy Friendsgiving came out of that. And it is a story told in lyrical verse about how many people come together to celebrate gratitude and being together.
Well, and I think that is a wonderful place to end because I know every year when we get to the end of the year, you and I both do 12 Days for Writers, which Julie Headland started. And there is a day in there when we talk about gratitude and all the things that we're grateful for. And I know every single year I text you and I say, Marcie, I am so grateful for you. You are like the highlight of my writing year. our partnership. So anyway, I could think of no one better to kind of have this conversation with, especially since we both have new book babies coming out within a week of each other, all written as part of our accountability relationship. So I will drop some resources and links in the show notes, as well as a link to your latest book. And all the best with Friendsgiving. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, friend.
Thank you so much for joining me and Marcie today on Nonfiction Kidlit Craft Conversations. I hope our chat inspired you to think about your own writing goals and the power of finding someone to walk beside you in this creative life. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with your writing community. You can find show notes and resources on my website at kirstenwlarson.com. And if you're looking to build your own writerly support system, I've got tools and resources to help you as well. Until next time, happy writing and revising.